Welcome. I'm the Frail Blaze. It is raining, but we'll tell a story anyway. Today's story. My grandpa was a Dragonslayer. That's what my parents told me. It was the end of summer. The cold air was starting to come in when my parents sat me down to give me a talk. My mother took a long breath. Lucas, your grandpa is going through a very tough time right now. He's currently fighting a ferocious dragon, and so he may seem a little off sometimes. But just know that he's only tired from fighting the dragon. I was a bit confused at the time. A dragon? I had no idea that my grandpa was a dragon slayer. My 6-year-old brain was overjoyed. Grandpa fights dragons? He's even cooler than I thought. There was a somber look in my mother's eyes, but she said nothing afterwards and just rubbed my shoulder. A couple of weeks later, we went over to my grandparents' house for a visit. The waft of fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies filled the air as we walked in. My grandma made the best cookies in the world. My grandpa sees me, and his eyes light up with that same joyous love they always do. Hey there, sport. How's my favorite second baseman doing? Grandpa, I play third base. You know this, I responded while giggling. Oh, right, of course. I'll grab the gloves and we'll go toss the ball around. He walks towards the kitchen before catching himself. He then walks upstairs to go grab our baseball gloves. The autumn leaves were starting to fall as we went outside to play catch. My grandparents' house was in a nice neighborhood, and it had a lot of trees. Rays of sunshine were flowing through them as we tossed the baseball around. After we play for a bit, we go back inside and help ourselves to my grandma's favorite chocolate chip cookies. I can't believe you're really a dragon slayer, Grandpa. My grandpa's eyes widen for a second before they go back to his usual joyous self. Haha. Well, an old man can have a few secrets, can't he? I want to help you fight it, I insisted. Ha! I'd love to have you help me, but sadly I fight the dragon after your bedtime each night, he said. I pouted, but it seemed like a reasonable enough explanation for my 6-year-old self. Shortly after we finished eating the cookies, my parents and I packed up in our car and gave a wave goodbye as we pulled out of the driveway. That was the last time I saw my grandpa at his house. That night, I dreamt of a dragon. It spouted fire from its mouths and snarled as it stared at me. I shook in fear as the dragon raised its claw and began a massive swipe at me. I could see the razor-sharp edges at the end of each finger that looked about as big as me. But all of a sudden, my grandpa was there, clad in shining silver armor. He raised a mighty shield that deflected the dragon's claw before shouting to me, "Come on, sport, we got a dragon to fight." All of a sudden I realized I had a sword and a shield also, perfectly fit to my size. My fear had evaporated when I saw my grandpa, and I let out a roar as I charged to follow my grandpa towards the dragon. I woke up with a start immediately afterwards. I felt frustrated I couldn't end up fighting the dragon, but I was still smiling, thinking of my grandpa being a heroic dragon slayer. The months go by as school starts, and we aren't able to visit my grandparents, though I did manage to talk to them on the phone sometimes. My grandpa started to seem less and less like his usual self. He was still a kind old man I came to know and love, but he seemed to be talking like he was distracted by something and lost all train of thought frequently. My parents told me he was just tired from fighting the dragon. 6 months after I had that dream about fighting the dragon, I had another one. The dragon was there, and my grandpa was too, but things were different. My grandpa was pinned under the dragon's talons, and he looked to be struggling. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" I shouted. My grandpa looked at me, but the usual joyous glow that was always in his eyes wasn't there. He looked scared, confused. I wasn't about to just let this dragon win, though. I drew my sword and charged towards the dragon. It stared at me with dark, soulless eyes. I woke up with a jolt, panting. I was scared, not of the dragon, but what was going to happen to my grandpa. 2 months later, my parents told me that we're going to meet Grandpa at the hospital. When we walked in the room, my grandma was crying quietly. She quickly wiped her tears as we walked into the room. "Hey, buddy. Grandpa might be a bit confused right now. He's very tired from fighting the dragon. But just know that he loves you, and that will never change." I gave my grandma a big hug. I didn't want her to cry. I wanted to be brave for her. My parents and I walked up to my grandpa. He was lying on the hospital bed. He looked like he was staring at something a million miles away. My mom was one of the first to speak. "Harry, this is your grandson, Lucas. You remember him, right?" "Lucas? All right. How could I forget? My favorite baseball player. You play for the Detroit Tigers, right? Third baseman?" I giggled. "Grandpa, I'm only 6. I can't play for the Tigers yet." "Oh, right. I'm sorry, buddy." He's never called me buddy before. I was confused, but at the same time I chalked it up to him being tired from fighting the dragon. Still, I couldn't help but feel a hint of sadness as we walked out of the hospital room. But right as I was about to head through the door, my grandpa shouted, "Hey, sport!" I looked back for just a glimpse. I saw the same joyous love in my grandpa's eye. "I'm gonna beat that dragon." I smiled at him before heading out the door. The drive home was quiet. I could tell my mom was sobbing quietly into her coat. My dad was driving. His eyes looked somber in the rearview mirror. "Dad, is the dragon too strong for Grandpa to beat?" I asked. My dad looks at me and sighs deeply. "I don't know, Lucas, but I know he's gonna try." That night, I had another dream. The dragon was there, so was my grandpa, but this time the tides had turned. My grandpa fought furiously, all while laughing with the same joyous laugh. I see him climb onto the back of the dragon bucking wildly to get him off. Grandpa, I'm here," I shout. He looks at me with those same joyous eyes. "Hey there, sport. Toss me that rope. I know you got a mean throw." Right as he said it, I realized there was a bundle of rope next to me. I pick it up and throw it with all my strength. Miraculously, my grandpa reaches out with one arm and catches it. "Thanks, sport. I can always rely on you." My grandpa swings the rope around the dragon, getting it right through its mouth. The dragon bucks even more wildly, but my grandpa holds on. Eventually, the dragon submits and stops bucking. I stare at my grandpa on the back of the dragon. He was not only a dragon slayer, he was a dragon rider. "We did it, Grandpa. We beat the dragon." He takes a long look at me, and with those same joyous eyes, and he smiles. Then he guides the dragon into the air as he flies away. My grandpa died that night. It was a sad day. My mom was sobbing the whole time, as my dad tried to comfort her, and I couldn't bring myself to cry. I was confused. I thought we'd won. If we beat the dragon, why did he die? The funeral was a few days after. A soft breeze made the trees rustle. It was a small event. He wouldn't have wanted anything bigger. There was a lot of crying, a lot of speeches about what a great person he was. As the ceremony came to a close, my grandma came up to me. She tried to smile. "Your grandpa wrote this for you a few months ago, as he was first starting to fight the dragon." She handed me a letter. I thanked her and I gave her a great big hug. I promised her I'd find the dragon that did this. As the sun started to set, my parents started to pack up the car. On the ride home, I decided to open the letter. It read, "Dear Sport, I know how this must feel right now. I was supposed to beat that dragon. And why am I not there still? Well, Lucas, there's something you should know about this dragon. Truth be told, I had no idea this beast was coming. It came out of nowhere, and it was just as surprising as it was scary. I was scared, Sport. I know that might seem surprising to you, your old, brave grandpa being scared, but I was. Dragons are scary, even to old-timers like me. But one thing kept me pushing on, kept me fighting. That thing was you, Sport. You were my sword and shield, my shining silver armor. I couldn't have fought the dragon without you. I know you can't see me now, but trust me when I say, I'm still out there, going on adventures. I carry you and your grandma and your parents with me. You guys are my courage, my protectors. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm going to be okay because I have you with me. I love you, Sport. Hit a home run from your old grandpa, huh? Your favorite Dragonslayer, Grandpa." Not our typical horror and gore, but strikes the soul just the same. Let me know what you thought of this story in the comments below, and I do hope you'll join me in the future for more frail Blaze tales.